Have you ever wondered how a Cadbury Dairy Milk bar is made? That smooth, creamy chocolate that melts in your mouth doesn't just happen by chance. It takes the right ingredients, properly controlled processes, and some of the most advanced chocolate-making technology in the world. But what goes on inside a Cadbury factory where these sweet, flavorful chocolate bars are made? It all starts with simple ingredients, cocoa, milk, and sugar. But turning them into a perfectly balanced chocolate bar is no small work. From roasting cocoa beans to mixing in fresh milk and shaping the bars, every process is important in making sure that it has similar taste in every bite. But how do factories handle massive amounts of chocolate without making mistakes? And what happens if a bar isn't up to standard? In this video, we'll take you inside the Cadbury Dairy Milk production process, showing you how raw ingredients are turned into the world-famous chocolate bar. You'll see how machines and skilled workers work together to mix, mold, cool, and package thousands of bars every hour, all while maintaining the rich, creamy taste that Cadbury is known for. If you love our videos on how everyday products we eat and use are made, kindly hit on the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. I'm sure you won't miss any of our behind-the-scenes factory tour. Now let's get to the main work. Cadbury Dairy Milk may seem like a simple chocolate bar, but it starts with properly sourced ingredients from different parts of the world. The rich, creamy taste comes from a blend of high-quality cocoa, fresh milk, and just the right amount of sugar. But before these ingredients ever reach the factory, they go through a long process to ensure they meet the highest standards. Cocoa is the most important part of any chocolate bar. It comes from farms in West Africa, South America, and parts of Asia, where cocoa trees grow in warm, humid climates. Farmers harvest the cocoa pods by hand, cutting them from the trees with machetes. Inside each pod are cocoa beans, surrounded by a soft, white pulp. At this stage, the beans don't taste like chocolate at all. They need to be fermented and dried under the sun for several days, which brings out the deep, rich flavor. Once dried, the beans are packed into sacks and shipped to Cadbury's factories, but only the best beans made it through. Milk is what gives Cadbury Dairy Milk its smooth, creamy texture. Unlike many chocolate brands that use powdered milk, Cadbury famously uses fresh liquid milk in its production. Sourced from dairy farms in the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia, the milk is collected daily from cows that graze on nutrient-rich grass. To keep it fresh, the milk is sent to processing plants where it's pasteurized to remove bacteria. Because fresh milk spoils quickly, it is then evaporated to remove water content, turning it into a thick, condensed form. This makes it easier to transport and ensures that it stays fresh until it's blended with cocoa and sugar. Sugar plays an equally important role in balancing the flavors of the chocolate. It comes from sugarcane and sugar beets, grown in countries like Brazil, India, and across Europe. Sugarcane is harvested by cutting the tall stalks close to the ground, where the sugar content is highest. The stalks are crushed to extract a thick, sweet juice, which is then boiled until it crystallizes. Sugar beets go through a slightly different process. They are pulled from the soil, washed, and sliced into thin pieces before being soaked in hot water to release the sugar. Once processed, the sugar is packed and transported to chocolate factories, where it will be mixed with cocoa and milk to create the perfect sweetness. Other ingredients help bring everything together. A small amount of cocoa butter extracted from cocoa beans gives the chocolate its smooth texture. To help it stay soft and creamy, a touch of vegetable fat is added, preventing the chocolate from melting too quickly, especially in warmer climates. Lecithin, a natural emulsifier found in soybeans or sunflowers, ensures that all the ingredients blend evenly, giving dairy milk its signature melt-in-your-mouth quality. Every ingredient plays a vital role in making Cadbury Dairy Milk the chocolate bar people love. The richness of the cocoa, the smoothness of the milk, and the balance of sugar all work together to produce a flavor that has been enjoyed for generations. But sourcing the best ingredients is just the beginning. Once everything is approved, the real process begins. The process of turning raw cocoa, milk, and sugar into a smooth, creamy chocolate bar is where the real production work happens. Now that the ingredients have been carefully selected, what happens next inside the factory? How does Cadbury take these raw materials and turn them into thousands of chocolate bars every day? This takes us to the next stage, where cocoa is refined, blended, and prepared for the final product. After the arrival of the raw materials at the factory and past their initial quality checks, the process begins. But how does this process work on such a large scale? What happens inside the machines that make thousands of chocolate bars every hour? The process starts with the cocoa beans. Even though they've already been dried and fermented, they still need further refinement. The beans are first roasted in large rotating drums, where they are heated to just the right temperature. This step is necessary because it brings out the deep, rich flavor of the cocoa while removing any unwanted bitterness. If the roasting is too light, the flavor stays weak. If it's too long, the beans become burnt and unusable, so temperature timing is important. Once roasted, the beans move to the winnowing stage, where they are cracked open to remove the outer shell. Inside each bean are small pieces called cocoa nibs. This is where all the flavor comes from. The nibs are then ground down into a thick, dark liquid known as cocoa mass. This happens because cocoa beans contain natural fats, called cocoa butter, which melt under heat and create a smooth, chocolatey paste. Even though it looks like melted chocolate, this paste is still too bitter on its own. It needs to be blended with other ingredients to create the familiar Cadbury Dairy Milk taste. The next step is mixing. The cocoa mass is combined with fresh condensed milk and sugar in large industrial mixers. This is where Cadbury's product creamy texture begins to form. The fresh milk gives it a smooth richness that sets dairy milk apart from other chocolates. The ingredients are blended together until they form a thick, sweet chocolate mixture. But at this stage, the texture is still rough, and the sugar crystals are too large. To fix this, the mixture needs to be refined even further. This leads to the refining process, where the chocolate mixture is passed through a series of steel rollers. These rollers press the mixture again and again, breaking down the sugar crystals and cocoa particles until they are so fine they can't be felt on the tongue. This is what gives Cadbury Dairy Milk its silky texture. If this step were skipped, the chocolate would feel grainy and rough instead of smooth and creamy. Once refined, the chocolate mixture moves into the conching stage, one of the most important steps in chocolate making. Giant metal arms stir and aerate the chocolate for several hours, sometimes even an entire day. This process smooths out the texture even further and enhances the flavor by allowing any remaining bitterness to evaporate. The longer the chocolate is conched, the better the final taste. This is one of the secrets behind the rich, creamy flavor of Cadbury Dairy Milk. But the chocolate isn't quite ready yet. Even though it's now perfectly blended, it still needs to be stabilized so that it doesn't become too soft or too hard. This is where tempering comes in. The chocolate is carefully heated and cooled in a controlled sequence, allowing the cocoa butter inside to form stable crystals. This step is what gives chocolate its shiny finish and that satisfying snap when you break off a piece. Without tempering, the chocolate could turn dull or develop white streaks known as bloom. Now that the chocolate is perfectly smooth, balanced, and ready to be shaped, it moves on to the molding process. The liquid chocolate is poured into specially designed molds that give dairy milk its signature shape. The molds travel along a conveyor belt, passing through a cooling tunnel that gradually hardens the chocolate. If cooled too quickly, the bars could crack. If cooled too slowly, they might not set properly. The temperature must be just accurate to ensure a smooth, firm texture. Once the chocolate is fully set, the molds are gently vibrated to loosen the bars, allowing them to drop onto another conveyor belt. At this point, the chocolate bars finally look like the dairy milk you'd see in a store. But before they can be packaged, they must go through one final inspection to ensure there are no cracks, air bubbles, or imperfections. If a bar doesn't meet the standards, it's sent back to be melted down and used again. Can you imagine how many steps it takes to create just one dairy milk bar? From roasting cocoa beans to refining the texture, each step makes sure the chocolate is smooth, creamy, and full of flavor. The entire process is a mix of science, timing, and tradition, all working together to produce the perfect chocolate bar. Now that the chocolate has been shaped and cooled, the next step is important. Let's take a look at what happens next inside the assembly line. After all the mixing, refining, and molding, the next step is to assemble the final product. The assembly line is where all the pieces come together in producing that sweet Cadbury Dairy Milk bar that you see on store shelves. Once the chocolate bars have cooled and set, they move down a long conveyor belt, passing through several key stages. First is the wrapping station. The bars are individually wrapped in aluminum foil or a paper wrapper, depending on the packaging. This is done with the help of high-speed machines that wrap each bar properly, making sure the wrapper is sealed tightly to preserve freshness. You might be surprised at how quickly the machines do this. In just a few seconds, a single bar of chocolate can be wrapped and sent on its way to the next stage. But while the wrapping machines do the heavy lifting, human workers also play their part in the process. They oversee the machines, ensuring everything is running smoothly. If there's ever an issue, like a misaligned wrapper or a damaged bar, workers step in to fix it immediately. Even though the assembly line moves quickly, Human visibility is essential to maintain the quality of every single chocolate bar. Once wrapped, the bars move along the assembly line to the packing station. The wrapped bars are carefully arranged into larger boxes, which are then sealed and labeled. Some factories even use robotic arms to handle the heavy lifting, grabbing the wrapped bars and placing them into boxes with impressive speed and accuracy. These robots are designed to move quickly and safely, ensuring that the boxes are packed tightly without damaging the chocolate. Can you imagine how many steps it takes to produce just one Cadbury Dairy Milk bar? From the wrapping to the packing, the assembly line handles thousands of bars every hour, and each one is checked to ensure it meets Cadbury's high standards. The robots move quickly, but workers are always there to monitor the process and ensure everything runs smoothly. Now let's talk about the robots in the assembly line. Robot-assisted assembly is becoming increasingly common in factories around the world, and Cadbury's chocolate production is no exception. These robots are programmed to move the bars along the conveyor belt, place them into boxes, and even stack them onto pallets. With robots handling repetitive tasks, workers can focus on ensuring that everything is up to standard. This helps make the process faster and more reliable, while also reducing the chances of human error. But know this, robotic arms are designed to mimic the movements of human hands, but they're much faster and can work around the clock without needing breaks. Once the Cadbury Dairy Milk bars are wrapped and packed, they don't just leave the factory right away. Every single bar goes through quality control to make sure it meets the company's high standards. Quality control isn't just a one-time check. It happens at multiple stages of the process to ensure that every Cadbury bar is smooth, creamy, and perfect. It all starts during the production process, where the cocoa, milk, and sugar are mixed and refined. At this stage, workers monitor the texture of the mixture closely. The chocolate needs to be smooth with no grainy bits of sugar or cocoa left behind. If the chocolate feels rough, it means the ingredients aren't blending properly, and this will be caught right away. Sometimes, adjustments are made to the refining machines to ensure that the texture is smooth enough before moving on to the next step. But it's not just about texture. The temperature is another important factor. If the chocolate is too hot or too cold, it could affect the final product. That's why factories use advanced machines that constantly monitor the temperature of the chocolate as it moves through different stages of production. If something's off, the temperature is adjusted to get everything back on track. Once the chocolate is molded into bars and begins to cool, it goes through the cooling tunnel, where the temperature is again carefully controlled. The bars must cool at the right speed and temperature to maintain their smooth texture and glossy finish. Any slight deviation in this process could result in cracked or uneven bars. Workers keep an eye on the cooling process, adjusting the temperature as needed. But what happens if a product doesn't meet the high standards? What if something goes wrong at any point in production? Here's where the real attention comes in. If a bar is damaged or not properly sealed, it's quickly spotted and removed from the line. The quality control team isn't just waiting for mistakes to happen. They're actively checking for defects throughout the entire production process. Here is a real-world example. Imagine a situation where a batch of chocolate bars comes out of the molds with a slight air bubble. These tiny imperfections might not seem like a big deal, but they can affect the overall appearance and texture. If a bar has air bubbles or cracks, it's immediately removed from the line and sent for reprocessing. The defective bars are melted down and used again in the next batch, ensuring that there's minimal waste and that the final product is up to Cadbury's standards. Another example involves packaging defects. Sometimes a bar's wrapper may not seal correctly or a label might be misaligned. Even though this doesn't affect the chocolate inside, it's not acceptable in terms of presentation. So, if a bar doesn't meet the packaging standards, it's pulled off the line and either rewrapped or discarded. Workers on the assembly line are trained to spot these small issues before they become bigger problems. One of the most important aspects of quality control is checking the weight of each chocolate bar. With thousands of bars being produced every hour, it's essential that every package contains the right amount of chocolate. If a bar is too light or too heavy, it's flagged for further inspection and either adjusted or removed from the line. But what happens if a defect is found in a final product, one that has already been packaged and sealed? In many cases, the product is tested further to determine if it is still safe to eat, and if it's not, it's disposed of properly. A small portion of packaged bars is randomly selected for taste tests and chemical tests to make sure the chocolate still has the correct flavor and that no ingredients have spoiled. If any issues arise during this testing, the entire production line may be temporarily halted and adjustments are made. But have you ever noticed that certain chocolate bars just seem to taste perfect every time? Yeah, that's thanks to all the checks and inspections that happen behind the scenes. What do you think about the quality control process? Would you have guessed that so many checks are involved in making sure that each bar of Cadbury Dairy Milk is flawless? But the quality control process doesn't end there. Even after the bars are packaged and ready to ship, some are pulled for random sampling and tested again to ensure the product's integrity is intact. By now, any defective bars have already been removed from the process, but these final checks are the last step to ensure that everything meets the quality standards that Cadbury is known for. In summary, quality control is a constant, ongoing process throughout the entire production process. From mixing and refining to wrapping and packaging, each step is properly checked, ensuring that every bar of Cadbury Dairy Milk reaches consumers in perfect state. When something doesn't meet the mark, it's quickly fixed, ensuring that every chocolate bar is just as good as the last. After the Cadbury Dairy Milk bars are carefully made and pass quality control, they move on to the next vital phase, packaging. This is the point where the bars are ready to be sent out to stores, where they will sit on shelves waiting for eager customers. Now, you might be wondering, what materials are used for packaging, and how does it affect the environment? That's a great question. Over the years, Cadbury has taken steps to make its packaging more sustainable. Instead of using materials that are hard to recycle, many of the wrappers are made from recyclable plastic or paper. The idea is to make sure the packaging does its job, protecting the chocolate, but also to minimize the impact on the environment. In fact, Cadbury has been working on reducing plastic usage and increasing recyclability across its packaging. They're committed to ensuring that all of their packaging will be recyclable or reusable. This is important because, as we know, plastic can take hundreds of years to break down, and that's a major concern for our planet. By switching to more sustainable options, Cadbury is taking responsibility for the impact of its packaging on the environment. Also, did you know that some Cadbury packaging is made from recycled materials? The company uses recycled paper for many of its chocolate bars, and the plastic wrappers are now made with thinner materials, reducing waste. These efforts help reduce the amount of plastic waste that ends up in landfills, making the product more eco-friendly overall. At this packaging stage, the wrapped and boxed chocolate bars are put together in a large box for distribution. These boxes are made from cardboard, which is also recyclable. The chocolate bars are carefully arranged inside the boxes to prevent them from being damaged during transport. This step is done quickly but with a lot of attention to it. The boxes are packed tightly so the bars don't move around too much. The boxes are then sealed with tape, labeled, and ready to be shipped out. After the bars are packed into boxes, they are loaded onto pallets, large platforms that hold multiple boxes. These pallets are wrapped with plastic film to secure the boxes and keep everything tightly together during shipping. This is where automation comes in again, with robots and machines working together to move the pallets around the factory floor and get them ready for shipment. These robots can lift and move pallets at high speed, making sure the chocolate bars are on their way to stores in no time. Now that the pallets are packed and wrapped, they're moved to the shipping area, where they are loaded onto trucks or sometimes shipping containers for long-distance transport. Depending on where the product is headed, the chocolate bars may be shipped by land, sea, or air. Along the way, the packaging keeps the chocolate safe from bumps, heat, and any other environmental factors that could damage the bars. Cadbury even has specific temperature-controlled shipping for regions with warmer climates to ensure that the chocolate doesn't melt or lose its quality during transit. Once the chocolate bars reach distribution centers, they are unloaded and sorted, ready to be sent to retail locations. The boxes of Cadbury Dairy Milk are then placed on shelves in stores around the world, where customers can grab them and take them home to enjoy. Have you ever noticed packaging innovations or sustainability efforts? Some brands have started to use clear labeling to show how recyclable their packaging is. Have you seen any of these in your favorite Cadbury products? Let us know in the comments. It's always interesting to hear about the small changes that make a big difference. Now, anytime you open a fresh, wrapped bar of Cadbury Dairy Milk, you now know the amount of work that went into packaging and shipping it to you. From the proper wrapping process to the sustainable materials used, Cadbury works hard to ensure that every bar is ready for you to enjoy, all while minimizing the environmental impact. The packaging keeps the chocolate fresh, safe, and ready for the world. From the cocoa fields in West Africa to the shelves in your local store, a lot is involved in producing a single Cadbury Dairy Milk bar. First, high-quality cocoa, milk, and sugar are carefully sourced and tested for freshness and purity. Then, the ingredients are blended, refined, and conched to create the perfect texture and taste. After being molded and cooled, each bar goes through rigorous quality checks before being wrapped, packed, and shipped out. The entire process, from ingredient sourcing to packaging, is designed to ensure that every bar of Cadbury Dairy Milk is as fresh, smooth, and delicious as the last. Whether it's the careful balancing of cocoa, milk, and sugar, the use of sustainable packaging, or the robots and humans working together on the assembly line, every part of the production is done with one goal in mind: to deliver that perfect bite of chocolate. Have in mind that it's not just about chocolate, it's about getting the best ingredients, using the right processes, and taking care to ensure quality at every turn. What do you think about the process behind this product? What product production process would you like to see next? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to learn more about how everyday products are made, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell. We are here to take you into every product manufacturing process.